Hey everybody, this is Stu Smith with another Tactical Fitness Report, and today we have special guest Steve Drum, Master Chief, Navy SEAL. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks so much, Stu, for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
And we have his partner in crime, Jason Kyle. How are you, sir? He is the creative director over at the getmental.com app program. So how are you, sir?
I'm good, dude. Thanks for having me. I'm not don't quite have as physical of a background as Mr. Drum, but I still take some hits working from home here behind my computer screen.
I gotcha. So just so people know, Jason has a comedian background. So this is my first time ever working with a comedian on my podcast. Usually you have some SEALs that are on here that are pretty darn funny too, but I will say we're not in your caliber of humor.
I don't know, actually. You guys might have a higher caliber. Actually, I'll give you a quick rundown of my background, so your listeners are like, "What? How the hell did you get a comedian Navy SEAL duo on one of these episodes?"
Yeah,
but
let's talk about your background. What brought you here today, Jason?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a different service background. I actually served in the Peace Corps in 2010 to 2012 in Albania. And when I got back, it was a real struggle to try to figure out, my identity and what I wanted to do next, both personally and professionally. So I took a job in management consulting. And on day 2 of that job, guys, I sat at my computer in my little cubicle in San Francisco and I Googled how to be a stand-up comedian. I was so miserable working that job as a consultant. And here's my, and maybe you guys had this similar experience as you guys got to travel and stuff. But when I was in Albania, I realized that there weren't many creative opportunities that existed there for young people. And then when I got back to the US, we have every opportunity in the world here at our fingertips. Doesn't mean it's easy, but we have the opportunity to pursue them. So I always wanted to do comedy. I was always naturally pretty funny. So I was like, let me give this a shot. So I started doing stand-up comedy. I was absolutely terrible at it for years and just kept getting better because it was something I really enjoyed doing. And that pivoted into acting, into voiceover work, into writing. It brought me to LA. And then I took a couple of jobs in TV development with some major studios. And then working in Hollywood really spiked my stress level. And that word is going to be something we'll keep coming back to, that word stress. And it just wasn't really a fit for me. So I was like, well, what are my next steps here? So a guy that I did stand-up comedy with way back in the day who became a writer and copywriter said, hey, I know this guy who worked with the Calm app. I was like, that app about meditation? He's like, yeah, he's starting his own company for men's mental health. And I said, tell me more. He said, they're looking for a writer with a comedy background. I said, tell me more. And I met the co-founders and I wound up taking this position as the founding creative for Mental. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's a little bit about my journey and my background and a lot of mental health, stress related things within that. So I'm just so grateful to be in the position where I'm at right now.
Well, just so if you're listening and you're wondering why these guys are on, is they have an app that is now available. It's called Mental, and I'll do a little walkthrough of it here in a minute. But you can find more about it at getmental.com, and you will see why this relationship is very unique in how they discuss and teach skills that can help you not only better fight stress when it occurs, but just be more mentally tough today.
Exactly.
And so, Master Chief, Steve, tell me a little bit about yourself and how your journey has brought you here today with Get Mental.
Yeah, so I was a high school kid who wanted to be a Navy SEAL. So I joined the Navy for that purpose right out of high school, but I also really sucked at math. I still do. And so I failed to actually qualify to be a SEAL by a couple of points. So I had a little detour up to Connecticut to work on nuclear submarines for a couple of years until I got my math scores up. But I also fell in with a good mentor who, without his help, I don't know if I would have ultimately been successful. So went to SEAL training, showed up at Buds Class 203 in 1995, graduated that later, the winter of 96, showed up to my first SEAL team, East Coast SEAL teams. Spent my whole career there between deploying overseas, Europe, Africa, Afghanistan, Iraq, a couple other places. And within that, interspersed with some training, so some instructor roles in a couple of different capacities in schoolhouses. The last job I took in the Navy, I had basically transferred from East Coast SEAL teams up to Great Lakes, which is where the Navy's boot camp is. And
Right.
while I was there to do one thing. And Stu, you're obviously familiar with, at the time, what was called the Dive Motivator program, right?
Sure.
Overseeing the program that onboarded young men and women into the Navy that had contracts to try out for SEAL, diver, air rescue swimmer, EOD, things like that. But while I was there, I got tasked with creating a program called Warrior Toughness. Essentially, it's myself, a clinical psychologist, and a chaplain locked in a room and said, hey, we got a problem here with our sailors and officers. We need to get them tough. They need to start thinking like warriors and be able to perform under the extreme rigors and pressures of naval combat. Should we go to war with peers, near peer competitives in the future? So we built out that program. And as I was getting ready to retire in 2019, I was like, well, what am I going to do? I loved connecting as an instructor. I liked teaching people. And why don't I take the things that I learned over my career, the things that we use for the effective program in Warrior Toughness, and actually use that to deliver content in the form of speaking, keynotes, workshops, things like that. And while I was doing that, I got approached by Anson, the gentleman that Jason spoke of. And he approached me and said, hey, we're interested. We want to find out more, but we like the fact that you've developed this program for the Navy and you seem like you'd be a good fit for the program. And so that's what started it.
That's awesome. So how similar would you say the mental app is compared to some of the Warrior Toughness protocol that you came up with?
Yeah, one of the reasons why we reached out to Drummy, and Drummy has given me permission to call him by his Navy SEAL nickname.
I like it.
So I call him everything. I call him Steve. I call him Steven. I'm like, what do you want me to call you? He's like, call me whatever the hell you want. That's how close we've become, Steve and I. So the reason why we love Steve so much and we reached out is because exactly what he mentioned about his background in being an instructor, his background in creating the Warrior Toughness program. And Steve can talk more about that program specifically, but it focuses a lot on, they worked with a clinical psychologist. Our co-founder at Mental is a neuroscientist. So they focus heavily on tactical breath work. That's one of our biggest things for bringing down stressors for men. They focus on positive self-talk. That's one of the biggest things for us bringing down stress for men. So there's a lot of synergy there between these, what we're trying to accomplish for everyday men and what Steve brought to the Navy to train sailors. So, we first met Steve and Steve was great. And he also had a book that recently came out on an audiobook too, that we used as a lot of source material. And as I was reading through it, I thought, man, there's so much alignment here with what we're trying to get men to do on a daily basis, which is to use these tools under stress to reduce stress in their everyday life while also being able to perform at their best under intense pressure. Now, that doesn't have to be a soldier in the military. That can be a soldier in the military, but that can also be the guy who's driving down the street and gets cut off in traffic and needs to bring down his stress and not refer to anger. That can be the guy who's going to give a big pitch in the boardroom and is breathing heavy and like, how do we bring down his stress? That can be the guy who is going in for the job interview. That everyday guy is who we're trying to approach with Mental, but there's a lot of tools that are used from the Navy's Warrior Toughness program and just also from Navy SEAL training when it comes to bringing down stress and performing at a high level.
I love it. I will say this, over the years, I've interviewed people who are very involved in resiliency programs and recovery and, the whole trauma stress spectrum. When we talk about left of the boom, and right of the boom, meaning, everything that you can do left of the boom, which means before you get into the high stress situations, you can learn some tools that you can put away in your backpack and pull out when you need them during those high stressful events themselves and operate the way you need to operate, as well as after those high stress events when you are constantly maybe replaying some of those events because your brain is like trying to say, okay, I almost died in this situation. I don't want to do that again. So I need to figure out ways to make this not happen again. And I've always liked that analogy of like, you got to find that little thought or that replay of traumatic events, a home somewhere in your brain. Right. So that's where, when we talk about left, right, center spectrum, where would you say this best fits in, as another tool for just overall mental health and mental wellness, mental toughness, that whole spectrum?
Yeah, great question, Stu. Yeah, and we have an expression we use too, which I'll explain in a second. We call it the 3 zones, but we are the proactive, preventative tool. So a guy doesn't slip into that super stressful situation and doesn't know how to handle it. And then we are also a tool that people can use, let's say, to the right of the boom after a heavy, stressful event. They can use it as a supplement to therapy and coaching and maybe a medication plan that they're on. Here's the thing about the traditional healthcare system and mental health approach. And this is the reason why our co-founders at Mental created Mental. They came over from the Calm app, which focused heavily on meditation and sleep stories. But what they found was that the majority of users were middle-aged women. And as they found that out, they kept leaning more heavily and heavily into that messaging and into that tone and into that branding to attract more middle-aged women. So the data is very clear on, we are not reaching men for their health and their overall mental health. Now, traditionally, society has said things like, and this is like kind of plastered all over social media for years now, is that all men need therapy. Men just need to go to therapy. If every man got a therapist, like everything would be a lot better for men. Okay. We love therapy. We're not knocking therapy. When I say we, I'm talking about, us at Mental. Our philosophy is therapy is absolutely crucial and important. The conversation that is not being had is that by 2024, the US will be short between 15,000 to 30,000 therapists. 65% of current therapists aren't even accepting new patients because they're at capacity. 60% of current therapists are 55 and older. Now, when they retire, there's not enough of a pipeline of new therapists being able to fill that void. And over 70% of adults need some type of mental health support, but lack the funds or the access to healthcare. So this is a major, major issue. So that kind of this idea of everyone just get a therapist is sort of a toxic narrative.
Sure.
So what we're approaching it from a different angle, which is, we think about it, Steve, and Stu, you mentioned, the left of the boom, and to the right of the boom. We also think about it in terms of 3 zones. There's zone 1, which we call the danger zone, which are people who have severe anxiety and depression, are in a suicidal state, need really medical aid support, right? And that's through medication, through intense psychotherapy, maybe even hospitalization. Then we have all the way on the other side of that spectrum, which is what we call full potential. A very small percentage of people are operating at that full potential. We call that zone 3. Now, in the middle is what we refer to as zone 2. Usually when I ask like a guy friend, I say, how you doing, man? How do they respond? I'm okay. I'm fine. That's that middle zone. That's that zone 2. And what we're doing is keeping guys from going from that zone 2 okay into that zone 1 of the danger zone. But what we're really doing is getting guys to go from that zone 2, I'm feeling okay, to that zone 3 of full potential. That's what we mean when we say, let's get mental.
Man, I love that. Steve, how did you guys build this thing? I mean, what was it? I mean, you guys don't look like app builders to me. Right? So how did all of that get involved? And like, what was the whole process of you two guys getting together and creating this app? Because I'm in day 2 of your app right now. Mm-hmm. And in my morning shower, I got to listen to a cool story about you on top of a roof in Iraq and hand grenades dropping at your feet, but you were able to bring it down. And so you're using these skills that you've learned through stress and training to bring people into focusing on just handling that little stressor that happens when you're in cold water. So what is this whole shower dynamic between you two guys?
Well, I'll say first, I'll be very clear. I did no heavy lifting when it came to the app creation itself. And again, as you're right in describing me as someone who doesn't look like they know how to do that. Absolutely knuckle dragger on a good day. I think for me, you asked an earlier question about the warrior toughness piece. And yes, a lot of this is distilled from that. And again, not just the warrior toughness piece, but if you look at some of the most high performing people, and then the people that I interviewed for my book, CEOs, Olympians, professional athletes, they all have that one thing. They're very intentional. They're very deliberate. And they're always kind of thinking being the left of boom. And that's the whole piece right there is even as Jason described, if you're in zone 1, by all means, you need some intense and very focused clinical care. But for all the rest of us, most likely we are going to find ourselves in a situation, as I call it, the X. We're going to find ourselves in a situation where we need to perform and we need to bring our A game. We need to manage that stress. We need to manage that energy and make sure that we show up exactly in the manner that gets us to our success and seize those opportunities. And so when you focus on what you're going to do, inadvertently, you will also clean up a lot of the things that serve as those recurring triggers, the exhibition of recurring trauma, because you're managing both of those things almost concurrently. You're preparing for your next thing because you're mindful of what it takes to manage stress. If I'm managing stress, driving down my car is driving down the road on the highway, as Jason said, if I can manage my stress there, I'm working on that trigger. And so then the next time I go in and it's that pitch in the boardroom, I've set the table for my success because I'm mindful with the energy and the stress level that I bring into that situation as well.
Stu, I want to add to that because Steve just hit on a great point, right? When we're in the moment of stress, that's the training opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
That's when we want to, right? And this is why, and Stu and Steve, you guys can relate to this probably better than anyone else on this planet, is bringing up good stress. Hell Week, for example, boot camp, bringing up good stress in order to decrease bad stress in times of crisis. That's why we use cold showers, because not every guy can access a beach and a drill instructors and a group of guys and have their own Hell Week, right? But everybody, for the most part, has access to a shower.
Sure.
So we've created that stressful environment of the cold shower to increase the good stress, where Steve teaches tools around tactical breath work, body relaxation, positive self-talk, and mental clarity, tools that he will teach you under the stress of the cold shower that can kick in reflexively under actual stress in everyday life.
I love that because there's multiple places where I know that I can practice bringing down my bad stress and bringing up my good, right?
Yeah.
And that is typically when I'm driving and somebody's going to piss me off no matter what. I mean,
it's inevitable.
It's just going to cut me off and I'm going to get to that point, right? But then I realize, okay, there's really no threat here, right? I didn't get in a wreck. Everything's cool. I might have got the finger. Let me just relax, just calm myself down. And that takes, it's not easy to do, but that's what makes it the fun challenge to do. Mm-hmm. And just like when I get in cold water, I've been in cold water many, many times. It's never fun when you first get in. Like after a couple of minutes, I can regulate my breath. I'm solid and everything's flow. But those first minute and a half, 2 minutes, yeah, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
It's a really great idea to, help people, practice being stressed in that situation, but then apply that to everyday stress that like you mentioned, right before a presentation, paying a bill at the end of the month when you don't have money to pay it. All this stuff is stress, and hormonally speaking, it's all the same, whether you got bullets flying over your head or you got a sick loved one that you're taking care of. Stress is
Exactly.
stress.
Our body, our nervous system doesn't know that it's that fight or flight response. Now, back during our ancestors, is that would kick in when they, had to go out and hunt for food and a wild boar was about to kill them. Then that fight or flight response would kick in.
Sure.
Now it kicks in when we have to give like a best man speech at our buddy's wedding. It's like there's no threat of a wild boar. Now the wild boar is already grilled by chefs and it's going to be eaten for dinner. Like it's all good, but the same physiological response kicks in, which is literally killing us. That stress that gets pumped through our bodies is killing us.
And what you're teaching, what I realized this morning, and I'm just in day 2 of this. I realized this morning is you are teaching people to metabolize stress.
Right. Yeah.
Naturally.
And trying to, and you'll get there later in the protocol, Stu, and we built this really strategically. And again, Drum is such a freaking excellent instructor when it comes to teaching these things, because he's teaching them for so long, is reframing our relationship with stress.
Yeah.
No, people for so long, like, don't want to get into a culture. I was like, I don't want to do that. That's terrifying. Terrifying. Dude, you are training your mind to get better. It's terrifying to not do that.
Yeah.
I think it's really important also to kind of look at, we use the word stress. Stress is not good, nor it's not bad. It's the amount and how we regulate that stress. Now, if you look at something, if you are objectively looking at how you're acting or how you're feeling, and you're saying, I don't like the way I feel, I don't like the way I'm acting, it is not serving my interest, then we kind of call that distress. And when we have those prolonged elevated levels of distress, that when it not only is it negatively impact our relationships and our performance, but also our long-term health. And stress, just like emotions, serve a purpose. And so we have to objectively look at that. So, for example, if we get angry, sometimes that's a stressor because we feel threatened. If we get anxious because we have to give a best man speech, or we get anxious, meaning like something that's going to happen tomorrow, I'm anxious. If we look at the benefit of that emotion, that is fundamentally telling us that we need to be prepared.
Sure.
So we need to listen to what those emotions are. And we need to not look at stress as good or bad. We need to say, how do we take that information and manage that? If we get, a lot of us, we're kids, right? We get stressed sometimes when we're getting ready, that roller coaster's climbing up. Maybe we feel that fear, we feel that stress, and then we feel that exhilaration, right? For me, it's getting on stage. I'm going to be a little bit nervous, and that's okay because it keeps me sharp. It keeps me focused. And that stress, because I can manage it, serves to further elevate my performance and not detract from it. So be conscious, be cognizant of stress and emotions, the information it's giving you, and what you do and how you manage that energy in that situation.
Oh, absolutely. Great way to reframe it, because it is a performance enhancer.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. That's really what you're teaching people to do, to manage stress and make it a performance enhancer versus a performance decreaser. And freeze, that fight, flight, or freeze type of situation that you don't want to get into that distress level.
Stu, I was just going to add that, and then we can move on. But I was just going to add that I've heard Drum say that before. Him and I, we wrote and recorded this whole Cold Shower protocol together in Chicago. I've heard him say all that stuff before. I still get goosebumps when I hear him talk, dude. I still get tingly. I love that shit. I love it.
It was
he's
really
inspiring.
good.
He's motivational. You know what I'm saying? I get all the goosebumps. But here's the thing: he knows how to crack a good dick joke.
Well, that's what I liked about this too. And like I said, I'm only into probably about 4 different segments of you guys interacting with each other. And to be quite honest with you, it sounds like 2 guys shooting the shit.
Yeah.
Versus a training program where I'm actually learning something, right? Yeah. And you do learn things. It's just a different approach. I think maybe it's our man brain needs some of that little entertainment and humor, to make it sink in a little bit. I think you used a term the other day called mentaltainment. Yeah. I'm hoping I can trademark it or copyright it. If either of you guys know a lawyer for very cheap, let me know and I'll reach out to him. But yeah,
I refer to it as mentaltainment, entertainment for our minds. And you could also call it like infotainment, edutainment, getting the information, the education you need, but in a fun, engaging, entertaining way. And I just like, we couldn't have picked a better partner, with Drum, because he's so motivational, inspirational, and smart and experienced and wise. But the guy knows how to have an absolute blast. And we had so many laughs together recording this thing. But look, the science also says that smiling and laughing brings down our stress levels. That is scientifically fucking proven, right? Oh. And with my comedy background, it was so important for me, and our co-founders were on board from the get-go. This is why they brought me on. We have to do this in a fun, funny, entertaining way, because mental health is so, you see these ads for these companies like these ads that are trying to market to guys and the BetterHelp and all of that. And they're so serious, and they tell men that they are absolutely broken. That's the approach to this. And we have a very different tonal approach, which is let's have some fun while also strengthening our mind to bring down stress. I mean, that's the whole point of this thing. It's not to take it so incredibly seriously, even though, as Drum always says, it's a very serious topic, right, Steve? But we don't have to take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's funny. 100%.
Like, yeah, what he said.
Yeah, what he said. But Jason and I were talking about this yesterday. We're like, hey, at some point we have got to release the outtakes of the stuff that got cut from the app, just the conversation or the things like, we probably can't put that in there because it was so damn fun and hilarious. But yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to add. Nothing of real concrete value.
Well, let's add this. I got a good question for you that you can add some cool stuff, because I'm already intrigued by, like I said, day 2 of listening to you talk during my shower. It's like, what are
creepy,
some?
But it's not.
What are some of the things that you learned in SEAL training, as an operator, training and as an operator that go into this app? Like, something I've learned whenever I was taking resiliency classes over the years and post-military services, that a lot of the training that I learned, just learning how to shoot and calm myself down before I shoot, was a great tool to almost parallel training to de-stress, myself. So, what are some of the
Drum,
things
I'll take this one, dude. Okay. I'll take it.
Okay, Jason, run with it. No, there's 3 primary things that I just think of right off the bat. And the one thing, which we were talking about humor, right? We're talking about just, you can vision, you probably can recall back, Stu, when you're going between runs. So like you're at this 2 platoons doing land warfare training or close quarter combat. 1 platoon is going through the training scenario. You've just got done your training scenario, and you're all sitting like on a log or something like that, maybe eating some chow real quick. And inevitably it's all about trying to make one another laugh. Well, this may come as a shock, but you will also kind of see that same thing at a memorial service, right? To lighten that up. And it's always like you described, to relieve tension. At the end of the day, though, it's just plain fun. It just makes you bond stronger. And we try to give that a little bit. And we also share some of that on the Discord community as well, to kind of create that brotherhood online. The next thing, as you described, Stu, is very important, like the breathing, energy management through breath control. And so when I went through sniper school back in 1999, we were always running. Like, the big thing was 10-mile runs all the time. And it was like, well, why run so much? Because, again, you're training that aerobic capacity. But between some of our shooting drills, we would do sprints. And then we'd have to, as quickly as possible, put accurate shots down range while you're breathing. And if you know anything about shooting fundamentals, you want to have that exhale, and you want to let the air out, pause, and then break your shot, so there's no movement being influenced into that barrel. And so it's that deliberate lowering that energy, increasing that focus. And lastly, it's that stress inoculation. And I think that's probably one of the cornerstones of the Get Mental app, and as well as the things that I talk about. We are putting you under the cold water to give you that stress. In the SEAL teams, close quarter combat, if you make a mistake, you're getting yelled at in front of your peers, and that offers an incredible amount of stress, not as best you can replicate in terms of combat, which you can't, but it gives that stress. So you start stair-stepping up that level of stress in training. and you start to inoculate yourself enough to where you're not focused just on the stressors. You're able to open that aperture up now and have a bigger grasp on what's going on in your environment, who's going where, who's doing what, how to think 2 steps ahead of the enemy or the scenario. So those primary things, I think the humor, the being able to do the breath and control energy management, and lastly, that kind of stress preparation, stress inoculation.
Yeah, I love it. I will tell you this, I'm not knocking yoga because I love yoga-based stretching.
Mm-hmm.
But for me to sit through a yoga class, for a whole hour or whatever, it doesn't help me. Right. What I need is, and what I've done over the years is I've created this little 50-50 split of like hard 5 minutes cardio, like whether on a bike or running or whatever, followed by 5 minutes of yoga, where I get my heart rate up and then I focus on relaxing and get my heart rate down.
The task switching is super helpful for that, Stu. Yeah,
Oh,
there's a new sport that your listeners might think I'm making this up. It's called chess boxing. And you go in the ring and you box one round with an opponent. And then when that round is over, you sit down and you play chess with that opponent. Because what you're doing is you're spiking the adrenaline, the energy, the anger, the rage, and like you're trying to knock the guy out with your fist. And then you have to sit down, relax, and focus and try to knock the guy out with your chess pieces.
I love that. That's the first time I'm hearing about it. That's phenomenal.
How crazy is that, guys? And that's a great way to train our minds, our bodies, and to bring down our stress, because, when us guys, when we get into that situation where somebody cuts us off in traffic, what do? Our adrenaline spikes, our stress goes up, we get into anger and rage. Things like the task switching, Stu, that you're talking about helps us bring those things down.
Yeah, I love it. So tell me this, what have you guys learned personally about yourselves by creating this, one, dynamic between yourselves, but also just this new tool that people can use to really help regulate their stress?
I learned Hell Week probably isn't for me. Too much sand. That's a little, I'm more of an asphalt guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, Drum, go for it, dude. I'm curious to hear. This is something you and I haven't talked about, but what are some lessons learned for you?
I mean, I'll tell you what, the first thing that comes to mind is that since leaving the SEAL teams, I really miss being able to work with super funny people and having that engagement. That's number one. That's probably not really helpful for the audience, but for those who may be entering the military, you're going to really connect with people, and it's going to be those people that you can laugh with, that you can have a good time with. That's going to be maybe one of the driving factors that's going to give you satisfaction in your career. So I would encourage people to lean into that. And the other thing is just how important, establishing your battle rhythms are. Right? Because even for me, I would let some of those habits and routines atrophy. As an example, it's like I learn all these skills. I've learned these throughout developing the Warrior Toughness program and the things I've learned over my career. But I've got to be a little bit more deliberate with instituting those back into my daily practices and routines. And the nice thing about the app is we're not asking for a big investment, right? It's like, you want to go do this, you want to go add mobility, you want to go add all this type of thing. Now you're asking people to carve out more minutes from their day. When you're doing this, again, you're either on the can, dropping a deuce, listening to the Daily Deuce, or else, you're in a cold shower. You're going to take a shower almost every day. So it's very approachable. That's the thing that I learned. It's just small investments can make a really big impact.
Well, while we're up, let's share what the app is doing.
Speaking of, Steve just dropped the Daily Deuce on us, so we can explain to our listeners what that is. They're probably hearing that and be like, "What the hell is that?" But it kind of makes sense.
What is the
cart
Daily
before the horse
Deuce?
start?
So can you guys see this?
Yeah, we can
see my cold shower.
Yeah,
elite training that I just
look
conquered
at that,
today.
Baby. Look at that. Look at those colors.
What's that?
I said, look at those colors. I have nothing to do with the colors. I wrote the stuff, but I wanted to shout out the colors.
No, it's really cool. So, like I said, I am just now learning how to use this thing, and this is kind of like the first day. Like your introduction was, you have a home,
Yeah.
and it was kind of neat. Share a little bit about this
Yeah,
one little piece
So
of information here.
And I'll back up just even one more step, Stu, and you probably did this through what's called onboarding, right? Every time you download an app, you go through this initial like introductory sort of screens, and what we do is we ask questions around what's the identity that you want.
Here we go.
Right. And then who are the archetypes of guys that you resonate? There you go. So you got Da Vinci, right?
I got Da Vinci, I got Socrates, and I got a Navy SEAL. So
yeah, and here's a perfect example of if we look at Da Vinci, right? If we look at these archetypes, if we look at these identities, Da Vinci, he was creative, he was a visionary, but then we add a little bit of the humor and the fun in there, right? He wields a paintbrush like a Beretta, right? So we have all of these, like, Socrates, he was curious, he was a man of principles, he loved teaching and studenting, and the studenting, that was his thing. Navy SEALs, they're resilient, they're team oriented, and they will selflessly buy around for the guys. So these are these archetypes, these are these identities that we really resonate with, that we aspire to have and to hold in our everyday lives. So we kick it off with that, and then we keep those in your app, so you always have something to go back to and be like, yeah, these are the guys that I always aspire to be, and these are the values that I want to live by. And then when we get into the app, we have what's called now I should say the whole app is geared towards not adding hours and hours to men's current routines, right? A lot of times we have to change and do new habits that require major life shifts. And then what happens? Those habits don't stick. So what we did was we created something that fits seamlessly into men's daily routines, things that they're already doing. What are they already doing? We're doing a shit shower shave routine, right? Not all of us shave every day, but we kind of, we like the phrase of shit shower shave. Also, we just like saying shit. So that's why we called the Daily Deuce the Daily Deuce. Why? Because you're already taking a Daily Deuce. So instead of stress scrolling, listen to the Daily Deuce. And what does this one talk about? It's called Screw the Results. Commit to a daily habitual process, and results will follow from that. Like, how often have we heard that message? But we need to keep hearing it. We need to detach from the results and focus on enjoying the process, because that's what brings us joy. So you'll hear things like that every day, Stu. And they were different things related to wisdom, motivation, and science-backed tools. So those are the things you'll be hearing on a daily basis with the Daily Deuce. And it's not, I love Huberman to death. It's not a 4.5 hour podcast of like science words. It's condensed like 2.5, 3 minutes. You know what I mean? Like shit we can understand. And every time you listen to it, you'll have it in the backlog like that, right? So you already listened to your first 2 days, so you could go back and listen to them. Mm-hmm. Then what we have on the home screen, Stu, is underneath the Daily Deuce is what we call your Daily Do. So after you listen to the Deuce, and this is really cool, man. After you listen to, if you click on today up there in the top in the middle, so you scroll down a little bit, right there, you have what's called the Daily Do. And this is really cool, man. After you listen to the Deuce, you'll have a writing prompt that sometimes it's like, list 3 habits that are part of the process and not the result. And you just list those 3 things. And what the app will do, it will respond to you with clinical AI, not just random chat GPT. We have a clinical psychologist and a neuroscientist on staff writing these things, and it will respond back to you with a daily action that you can do for that day that is achievable and attainable, and something you could do within like the next 12 hours before the day ends. So it's not like, embrace a mindset for the rest of your life where you embrace the process over the result. No, it's something small and manageable you could do that day that is building healthy habits.
Yeah, I love it. And that's the key. It really is the key to everything that you want to do, is building healthy habits.
Yes. And we're using AI and smart journaling in a very clinical and scientific way. It's not, hey, write me a term paper on Abraham Lincoln. Like, I mean, like a lot of people are doing that now, which is, actually shit. I wish I had that shit in college. I'll be honest. But we're using AI in a way that helps you build healthy, disciplined habits. And then we have the cold shower protocol, right? So we already talked about your daily deuce routine. We already talked about, if you're doing a shave, you could quickly type in the journal prompt as you're shaving. It'll write back to you with your action for that day. So you get to set your daily intention. And then you hop in the shower and you do the cold shower protocol, and you get to hear Navy SEAL Master Chief Stephen Drum giving you some tools. And sometimes you get to hear me swearing a lot.
Now, can you see the getmental.com website?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So this is getmental.com, everybody who's watching. And it's right there. I mean, not a whole lot of words on the front page. It just says how men strengthen their mindset. It's a great title for this. And you can download it from the App Store or Google Play.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. Here's your shit, shower, and shave. And, literally, you can have it turned on when you're in the bathroom, doing all three, and get your daily dose of what you need to do
and you're ready to go, and you're ready to tackle that day. I mean, how many guys, Stu, you asked us kind of what we learned throughout this. And, I learned a lot about, you like that? People love that quote from
this shit works.
There's our founder, and Anson's story is actually, it's really, really emotional and heartfelt. I mean, he, two of his closest family members, male family members, died by suicide when he was young. And, they tried therapy and they tried some different approaches, but it just didn't really resonate with them. And Anson has set out and been on a mission. That's why he got his PhD in neuroscience. That's why, he wanted to join Calm to work in the mental health field. And that's why he co-founded Mental, so we can help men deal with a lot of these things that in the world right now, a lot of these apps, guys, there's we found a number the other day, there's over 20,000 mental health apps that are out there.
Wow.
You know how many are geared towards men? Just the one that we're looking at right now on your screen.
Damn. Really?
The approach has not catered to men.
Huh. Damn, we need it the most.
Right?
Yeah, I like this. So this app is built for people who dig Andrew Huberman, but don't have 47 hours for podcasts. I actually listen to Huberman in my car. So
yeah,
I love him.
That's the only time I have.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, same.
The only time I have to listen to him was when I'm driving.
Yeah, I got to listen to it on 5x speed though, guys. I don't have time for all that. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah. You definitely have to double up speed. Want to live a long and healthy life like Chris Helmsworth and Limitless, okay? Want to train their minds so that they're resilient to stress, want to find purpose, reasons to jump out of bed, want discipline to be entertaining, but not just David Goggins yelling at them. I get that. That's pretty funny. I love Goggins too. He's doing great things, inspiring millions of people to just be tougher.
Yeah.
And but yeah,
I would say
the humor. You can see the humor is built into this.
Yeah, Stu, look, I'm a big fan of Goggins too. Like I'll listen to his stuff sometimes when I'm like not wanting to get out of bed. But here's the thing: he's a little bit too aspirational. It's like, maybe we can get a guy to walk around the block rather than breaking both your legs and peeing blood. I mean, can we meet in the middle?
I always said, there's a fine line between mental toughness and stupidity, right? And when you're breaking yourself, it's you're building some tough mental toughness, but if you're hurting yourself to where you can't do that anymore, it becomes a vicious cycle of just injury and pain and too much stress.
Yep. So. Great points. One thing I know we're coming up on the end here, Stu, one thing I want to add around these lessons learned from this process is, we saw on the website there is finding that purpose to get you to jump out of bed in the morning, and I grew up around stress and chaos and violence, right? And that manifested into a lot of my own mental health issues that I've been trying to tackle my whole life, right? One thing that I learned working with Drum and working with Anson, our co-founder, our neuroscientist, and working with our clinical psychologist is that this shit works, dude. We're not just doing this for like a get rich quick scheme. The thing is like the purpose and what we're trying to achieve, because as I was writing this with Anson and Drum And as we were going through this process, I was working 14-hour days in January trying to get this protocol out so we could record it in February. Years ago, I would have crumbled under that stress. I would have had a breakdown. I would have lashed out in anger. But you know what I did? I used the tools that I was writing about and that we were teaching in this fucking protocol, dude.
Nice.
And that shit transformed me. And I went through this protocol before we released it. We had to test it. And I went through this protocol and we were kind of tinkering with it and making small edits to the voiceover. And I was doing the protocol and I had friends that I was doing it with, man. It transformed us. So we're not doing this just for like a marketing ploy so Drum could sell, 3 more copies of his book. You know what I'm saying?
4 copies.
We're by the way, go get his book. Actually is really fucking good. And we used it as a lot of inspiration for our cold shower protocol. So, I just want to say that, guys, like now I have this has given me purpose to jump out of bed in the morning, which is to write and record these deuces for you guys on a daily basis, which is to work with people like Drum to build out these protocols. Like it has given me purpose. This shit has worked for me. And I'm a guy who thought like, fuck, I can only use medication or I need this or I need that. Like, what's the quick fix? It's like, that's not really the angle to approach it from. It's the science-backed, action-oriented tools to train yourself under good stress to bring down the bad stress. That shit works, dude.
Yeah. So, Steve, how about any closing words from you? Your focus on today and what's next with this journey for you?
Yeah, more specifically, I think to your audience, many of whom are young men and women who are looking at preparing for a selection process, preparing for rigor, but also just people that are just preparing for the next big moment on the horizon. It's like, okay, look ahead and say, what is the next challenge? What are potential triggers? What are potential stressors? How do I make sure? How do I build that architecture for my success in the future? Now that's practice, that's skill development, that's knowledge to be gained, but that's also mental skills. That's energy management, that's stress management, because it's one thing to learn the things, but it's quite another to be able to actually do them in the clutch when the pressure's on. And so we're offering you a very easy and approachable way to start building those habits to where it becomes second nature to pivot and adjust when things don't go according to plan. Right, to have somebody say something to you that makes your face get flushed because you're frustrated or embarrassment, but for you to be able to stop, take a beat, and choose an action or behavior that still gets you towards your action and your outcome that you want. So I think that's a good place in terms of what's next for me in regards to the mental app. We're kind of in talks with seeing what that looks like, but I told the guys, hey, I love working with you. I'm eager to do more. Put me in, coach.
Stu, we got guys who have just burned through the 2 levels of the cold shower protocol. The level 1, by the way, I really want to stress this. Level 1, if anyone out there who's listening, if you're not already accustomed to cold showers, don't try to don't be like, oh, I'm a tough guy, I could do level 2 right away. Level 2, we start with right away at 90 seconds. Level 1, you start at 5 seconds, medium cold, and Drummy teaches you all the tools you need to prepare yourself to handle daily 90-second cold showers. So really start with level 1, but guys have burned through both levels and they're like, we want more. This is great. Like, we want to keep hearing from Drum. We want to keep being entertained by you guys. Like, what's next? So we're thinking about building out even a little bit more to level 2, maybe a level 3. And the demand is there. I mean, over 90% of guys that get through day 2, Stu. So hopefully this is you. Over 90% of our users wind up completing the whole protocol and they make cold showers a habit.
Nice. I just want to add one real quick thing, Jason. I think if you are a complete cold water, mental skills, breathing ninja already, then yes, you may get a little bit bored with the first level 1. But for everybody else, even if you kind of do know mental skills, even if you kind of have done cold shower, I really encourage you to start with level 1 because you're going to hear some great stories and you're just going to get that many more reps and sets to kind of sink this in as a habit. Because not only do we want you to learn the skills in the shower, we want you to become so familiar with it that you are using the skills that we teach that morning throughout your day, and each skill builds upon itself. And so finally, you're going to have a full menu of different tools that you can use to overcome a lot of the challenges and obstacles in your day-to-day life by the time you're done.
I love that, because there's so many opportunities. There's so many opportunities in a day to practice these skills. And if you get started on your day in that mindset of like you're ready to practice these skills, I mean, chances are you're going to do it when the guy cuts you off. You're going to do it when somebody slams a door in your face or yells at you at work or whatever. You just be able to take that breath.
Right. That's right.
And have a better outcome for everybody around you. And just
you're not always, I was going to say, you're not always going to get it right. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to maybe react poorly to a car, but then immediately you say, okay, I recognize that. All right. I don't have to do that next time. It's just one more, focus on the next, okay. The next boom that I have coming up. All right. I didn't get this right. Let me commit. Let me make a better focus on getting it right the next time. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep getting better.
Yeah. That's what I like about your shower, because you give us a warning. Right? You're saying, all right, we're going to turn the cold on in 2 minutes. You just continue on doing what you got to do. And in 2 minutes, we're going to get busy. And I want you to breathe this way before you do it. And then when you get into it, you relax it and you just learn how to deal with it. And I think it's such a great way to teach it. Because a lot of the times when we learned this, it was in a classroom with a bunch of guys learning how to breathe. Nobody's stressed, right? Nobody's like having to bring themselves down. You're just doing it to practice the breathing. And when you do it under stress, you learn it so much better.
You're absolutely right. We have a 1 minute clip, Stu, if you're down to share it with the listeners after this episode. Maybe we can attach it at the end, but we got a 1 minute clip to attach so guys can get a little bit of a flavor of some of the days that I don't know. Drummy said, if you guys are elite, you might be a little bit bored. I don't know, that day 7 song. I sing a song on day 7. It's a rendition of Bonnie Tyler. They're not going to get bored listening to that shit. But we got a little clip to share with all of your with your audience too, so they can get a sense of like what we really mean by mental tainment and what we really mean by the mix of days, and it's really a unique, fun, entertaining, but also very valuable educational experience. So we're excited.
Not a problem. In fact, I will put that right here. Boom.
I'm Stephen Drum, Navy SEAL Master Chief and co-creator of the Navy's Warrior Toughness program.
And I'm Jason Kyle, co-creator of the Dudes Who Like to Nap program.
Every now and then I freeze my nuts.
Turn to cold, baby!
And I need the cold tonight. And I need the cold more than ever. And if you only move your body, you won't freeze your nuts forever.
You won't freeze those nuts.
In the teams, we refer to it as a brotherhood. That brotherhood became my ultimate sense of purpose. That got me through some of the most challenging and difficult training in the world. A clear purpose allows you to show up and push through the stress to keep going, especially on the days that you don't feel like it. Right now, take a few seconds to think about your purpose for showing up every day to train under stress, even on the days that you don't want to.
All right. So what do you guys think of that? That was pretty funny, right?
I had a dude. I'm the worst fucking singer in the world. But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to win a Grammy here.
No, it would kind of be weird if you were a really good singer pulling that off.
Right. I mean, look, here's the thing. How many of us, I don't know. Come on, Stu, Steve, you guys could admit it. We sing in the shower, dude. We're tough men. Well, you guys are tough men, but we're tough men and we still sing in the shower, and that's how people sing in the shower. So why not?
Hey, you know what? I think there are worse things to do in the shower.
But you also hear that really motivational piece from Drum. So we really do a nice job in mixing up sort of that entertainment, that comedy, but with the inspiration, with the motivation, with that kick in the ass, with the let's go, let's train and let's get better.
Yeah, I love it. So, hey, man, I just want to thank you guys for reaching out and, really educating me on this app, because I really do enjoy it. I appreciate it. I love the getmental.com website. You guys listening got to go check that out. Download the app, test it out. You never know. You're going to learn something. I promise you will learn something. If you don't learn something, you're going to be entertained. Chances are you're going to be entertained and learn something.
And we want to hear from you guys. You know, if people who are using it, like, send us some feedback, shoot us an email, join our Discord, find us on social. Like, we're trying to build all of those things out right now, but we're also constantly trying to make the experience better for everyone. So we're always open to feedback, and just let us know how you're doing with the app, what you're liking, what you want more of, what could be tweaked. We're always open to that.
Awesome.
So,
hey guys, well, thank you very much for being on my Tactical Fitness Report podcast. This has been a really good segment for us. I think it's just such a great way to frame it, and like you guys have done and mentioned, that it's just so important, because I think for most men, mental health and mental awareness doesn't hit them right. There's something wrong. I mean, we all need it, but it doesn't resonate.
Right.
And I think the combination of you two with humor and great stories and skills that have been learned through decades of really hard training and neurological, training as well, and education, proven science. It's really, I think, the next step to taking this to a level where people have it available to them, can use it, especially as, like, that alarming statistic you just mentioned about mental health care providers are becoming less and less each decade, which I did not know that. That's an alarming statistic.
And then we're even talking about male mental health providers, right? So, like, men that resonate with men is also it's not a great number. So yeah, all of these things that you mentioned, and one last thing I want to mention about Stu, everyone, is that, you guys hear him on the podcast, but I want to talk about Stu behind the scenes. Drum reached out to Stu, sent him an email. Maybe 15 minutes later, Stu was like, yeah, let's hop on the podcast. And we're like, oh, this is great. And then we write back, and then Stu's like, yeah, let's link up on Thursday and talk. Oh, this is great. When do you want to record? Tomorrow. Let's record tomorrow. Oh, this is great. What about the article on Military Guy? It'll be up Monday. Dude, Stu does not mess around. And Stu, you are such a great mentor, and you set such a great tone and example for a lot of men and a lot of people out there, man. And I'm just grateful for all the work that you do.
Oh, man. Well, thank you very much. I enjoy what I do, and it's a lot of fun. And, I find these young people, going in a direction of service, no matter what that service looks like, they give me hope for the future. So, 100%. Well, thank you. All right, folks. Well, that's it.
This is fun, dude.
Let's call it a day, and we'll get this thing up. Once again, guys, I appreciate it. Guys who are listening, go to getmental.com. Sign up for this thing, download it, and start playing with it. It is a lot of fun. So until next time, we'll see you later.
Thanks, Stu.